Hello, Garland Nixon, hanging out with Caleb Maupin, and we got lots of things to talk about, upcoming events and kind of stuff like that. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're hanging out with Caleb Maupin, and let's see. Caleb has an event before we get going. Caleb has a great event coming up. Here we go. And it is called, if I ever get to it here, for God's sake, it's called The Earth is an Awakening. America should join. That's January 11th, 2026 in New Jersey. Location is to be announced. It'll be from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. I will be there. A paltry 12 beans, 12.51 for is the cost. So we will let you know where it is. I'm looking forward to it. There's going to be a buffet. There's going to be speakers. There's going to be you'll get to talk with Caleb. Who knows who else might show up, but we're looking forward to that in New Jersey, and we're looking forward to meeting you there. All right, Caleb, let's get going. There's a lot going on, but let's start with here. The old folks would say the same thing will make you laugh, will make you cry, right? There's a thin love between a thin line between love and hate. All of those old adages about what is it? The yin and the yang and all that stuff, right? Okay. Why do I say that? Trump. On one side, you got the Ukraine stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. Well, all of the stuff about, the Russians have to give a little bit. They're giving a little bit. No, that ain't happening. But here's what I'll say. The Trump administration has determined that they don't really want to see Russia as an adversary. They've determined that, granted, it may be on their own way of doing things, but at least they're not trying to go to civil war. They're trying to, the nuclear war. They're kind of trying to somewhat disengage. I'll take that over what we were dealing with. That's on one side. On the other side, we got Venezuela. Okay. But here's the thing, Caleb, and I'm going to throw this to you. In some way, Trump has trapped himself in Venezuela. He's got a trap there. You know what I mean? In some way, he's there. How does he get out? How does he disengage? Does he attack Venezuela? If he does, he has problems. Does he want to get in an armed struggle with people who are ready for armed struggle and send not enough troops in to get them massacred? It's a trap in a way for Trump. At any rate, your thoughts on the whole Venezuela thing. I mean, it's a terrible, evil, dastardly deeds of killing people in boats, of stopping tankers that you have no right to stop. But I think he's in maybe more of a mess than he realizes. Anyway, your thought.
Well, today, the White House did the exact same thing they did on Thursday. They announced that Trump was speaking. Everyone was really, really nervous, and they got there. And you'll remember on Thursday, Trump didn't say the word Venezuela once in his entire 23-minute speech. He didn't mention Venezuela. Everybody thought he was going to be announcing an attack on Venezuela, and he did not even say Venezuela once. Today, same thing. Oh, my goodness. The State Department, Marco Rubio and Trump are speaking together. We all thought it was going to be an attack on Venezuela. And Trump came out and he said, I am building a beautiful new fleet of ships. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best fleet of ships we've ever built. It's going to be so great. The Golden Fleet, they're going to call it. No one will ever have built ships this good. It's just going to be so amazing. And then the reporter at one point asked about Venezuela. And he's like, yeah, well, Venezuela, Biden, he let all those undocumented Venezuelans into the country. That Biden is no good. And completely changed the subject. And I'm watching this and I'm just like, this is crazy. And on the one hand, it's like Trump is worried people aren't going to tune in to watch him speak. So by making everyone think he's about to start a war, we all turn our TVs on, thinking that he's going to start a war. So he's like using the threat of war to get ratings on the one hand. But also, I think they've just looked at the poll numbers. His base doesn't want this war. They don't want a war with Venezuela. They don't want it. And militarily, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. China is ready to defend Venezuela. Russia is ready to defend Venezuela. And they grabbed one oil tanker, and they went to grab another one today, and they were pursuing it. Oops, it got away. Whoopsie daisy. the best fleet in the world, the huge armada there just couldn't catch this Venezuelan oil tanker today for some reason. They were pursuing it. They had the helicopters chasing it for a bit, but it just got away. I'm thinking Trump doesn't really want to go to war with Venezuela. I think he's very much got to appease Marco Rubio and certain people that he's aligned with, very much so. And I think that they really would like to threaten Venezuela. I think Trump probably doesn't really care one way or another, but he's looking at the poll numbers and seeing that that's not good. And then on top of that, it's not just the poll numbers. It's the fact that his own camp is very heavily divided right now. We saw that on the stage at Turning Points. Tucker Carlson was there. Ben Shapiro was talking against Tucker Carlson. Then after that, we saw then J.D. Vance was there, and we saw Megyn Kelly speaking against Ben Shapiro. And I mean, it was like this Turning Points thing. It was like half the people there loved Ben Shapiro and loved Israel, and the other half hated Israel and hated Ben Shapiro. And and then I will say some weird things are going on. I'm sure we'll get more into that, but Trump's camp is not solidly behind him. His poll numbers are quite low at this point, but even people that are on his side are not solidly behind a new war. They're very divided over who killed Charlie Kirk and what's going on there. And I think Trump is just looking at it, and he's got smart people working for him that are just running the numbers and saying, don't do this. Don't go to war. Let Marco Rubio beat his chest, say all the mean, nasty things you want to say about Venezuela, threaten them, maybe sink some boats, but just don't do this. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, there's no win in it for him. It's nothing but a loss. And I would argue, and others have too, if he does that, he's just sunk his presidency, because you've got 30% of America approves it. And everybody knows that when U.S. starts these imperial wars, that wherever the numbers are, the first in the beginning, within 6 months, they start to drop and they just keep going down. If you're at 30, you got no room to drop. And the first American sailor or whoever pilot that comes home dead, that's going to drop to 15 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And he already knows that. So he knows he'll be and have started a war that, in fact, his people specifically voted not to get. And the people who hate him will all see the opportunity. Oh, yeah. He's naked, and they'll take him out. They'll just wipe him out.
Yeah. No, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she spoke up on Twitter today and talked about how she admires Venezuela as a Catholic country that doesn't have abortion except when the mother's life is in danger, that doesn't have the LGBT thing, and they're not a threat to us. And, Marjorie Taylor Greene is speaking up in support of Venezuela. I mean, and also, Tulsi Gabbard has been silent on Venezuela. She talks against drug dealers, which, I mean, no one likes drug dealers, right? But she's been silent on Venezuela. And then she did debunk the claim that Russia is trying to invade Europe. That was really powerful. And she came out and said, no, Russia is not marching in to invade Europe. And it's getting pretty ridiculous. So today, the new line, right, that they're running with is Russia, their military is in such bad shape, the soldiers don't have any food. And it's
they're eating each other. Did you see that?
They're literally eating each other. Yeah, we're told, right? They're resorting to cannibalism because they're so hungry on the battlefield. But yet, I thought they were on the brink of like invading all of Europe. They were so powerful, they were going to march into all of Europe. And, they can't get their stories really straight. And to see the director of national intelligence speak up and say that, look, Russia is not going to invade all Europe. That's just not going to happen. And calling out the Associated Press for lying about it. Absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. And I'm telling you that we have to pay attention to this. I will say that I am listening closely to what Maduro is saying. And I urge people to do that. Listen to what Maduro is saying. Because Maduro, he's not attacking Trump. He's attacking Marco Rubio. And he's saying Marco Rubio is trying to get you into a trap. Maduro even offered a huge amount of sympathy to Trump after the assassination attempt, that Trump survived. And even now, I mean, Maduro is obviously, preparing the country to defend itself. They don't know what could happen. But he's not saying F Trump. He's not, he's blaming this on Marco Rubio. And I'm paying attention to what Maduro is saying. I will say I'm very disappointed in a lot of Venezuela's so-called friends, because there are rallies happening about Venezuela, and you look at them, I don't see any signs about Venezuela. All the signs are about Trump. All the signs are about ICE. I don't see any signs about Venezuela. And that a lot of the groups, the communist groups that claim to support Venezuela are not listening to what Venezuela is saying. They're just kind of pandering to the Democratic Party and their kind of stop Trump agenda. And they can't just bring themselves to just stand in solidarity with Venezuela. And for goodness sakes, they couldn't bring themselves to actually, support and echo what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, what Tucker is saying. They couldn't, God forbid, any Trump supporter change their mind about Venezuela. It's really disappointing to see the woke left, these people that are supposed to be Venezuela's friends, not pay attention to what Venezuela is actually saying. So I'm seeing that, but I don't think Trump's going to attack Venezuela. He could, right? I mean, he could. We don't know, right? But at this point, Venezuela, they were told, oh, we're going to stop all your oil tankers. And they grabbed an oil tanker. And now Venezuela's military is escorting the oil tankers. And one just got through. And the USA, they were pursuing it for a while and then stopped, I guess, So it's looking to me like Trump's not going to invade Venezuela. And I certainly hope that is the case. But I mean, if it happens, obviously we have to oppose it. It'll be a disaster for the Trump administration. It'll be a disaster for the world. And I mean, it could be World War III. I mean, Russia is solidly behind Venezuela. You got to pay attention to this also, because you and I, we live in this news world. So fake news was going out today saying that Russia had evacuated its embassy in Venezuela. That was fake news. And the Russian embassy came out and they, Maria Zakharova of the foreign ministry said that is not true. We are not evacuating our embassy in Venezuela. And you got to watch out for this. And I urge people that like to follow the news cycle, don't retweet something like that if it's not true, because it has an impact. This is a psychological game they're playing, right? If they can get Venezuela to feel like Russia abandoned them, they can cause problems. They play psychological games. Psychological operations are being played. And so be very careful, right? And if you see
let me add one. There was some articles, a bunch of articles came out as soon as the U.S. put ships there, and they said Maduro made Trump an offer, and he offered Trump everything, that he could have all the oil, that he could do anything he wanted. But Trump didn't take the deal, and I thought, that's a lie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I see the game there. They say, oh, Maduro basically backstabbed his country. Right? He offered Trump the oil and the resources and everything if he would just let him and his family go. That's what, you know what I mean? And Trump wouldn't take it. In other words, he is a selfish guy who only wants to free him and his family, and he could care less about. I knew what that was. Like you said, that was a psychological operation against Venezuela, against the supporters of Venezuela, to teach them, oh, Maduro just wants to sell out the whole thing. I didn't believe it for a second.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild. And, this fake news game, for example, one story that I saw going through the media this week, right, was going around, all the communist internet was saying that there was a group of guys in Russia who were arrested for studying Lenin. Oh, how awful, right? Studying Lenin in Russia, they were arrested. Actually look into what the case is. We're about to publish an article on the CPI website. These guys were not arrested for studying Lenin. These guys were arrested for plotting a coup against the Russian government, and all of them are leaders of armed militias that are one of these guys was a professional anti-communist in the Cold War, and he's organized anti-Putin and anti-Ukraine war demonstrations. Like this, they weren't arrested for reading Lenin. They were arrested for forming some kind of subversive group trying to overthrow the Russian government in the middle of the war. Right. And they're all leaders of armed militia groups. So, but that was going around. The Greek Communist Party was circulating this claim. Oh, they arrested them just for reading Lenin. That was not the case. Now, the fact that they were invoking some communist rhetoric in their coup plotting or whatever, that's one thing, but it wasn't for reading Lenin. And that disinformation, I saw it go everywhere. It was everywhere. You got to be really careful with this stuff. And, I wrote this book after the killing of Brian Thompson, after the Luigi Mangione thing happened, The Danger of an American Years of Lead. And I talked about the years of lead in Italy, right? I'm telling you, and I said, and this summer I went to the Global Digital Forum, which is like a big media gathering they have every year in Russia. This was in Nizhny Novgorod. I spoke at it, and I said, congratulations to everyone here. We've already won the big battle, which is nobody believes Western mainstream media anymore, right? And they've already lost that war. They've conceded that war. Now we're in phase 2, where they've assumed people aren't going to believe them. So they're trying to manipulate the dissident communities. And that's what we have to watch out for, right? That is what we have to watch out for. And that's, that's kind of like this fake news story. Or, for example, I smell something off about this whole Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk thing. I'm just smelling something's off about it right now. I think there's a lot of holes in the official story of how Charlie Kirk was killed. But I will say it's a little weird that Benjamin Netanyahu came out immediately saying, we didn't do it. That's very weird. And then it's also, I mean, the layers of weird just keep piling up, right? And the fact that Nicki Minaj, speaking at Turning Points USA, on the stage referred to J.D. Vance as an assassin, right? But it was like supposed to like be an accident, but it wasn't. And then they did a whole thing of like, oh, did I just say that? Look what the conspiracy people are going to say. Like they're doing some kind of game with us. I don't know what exactly the game is, right? You know, I've heard some people fear that Candace Owens may be being fed disinformation, right? That there may be somebody on the inside who gives her true information, but then also gives her bad information or something like that could be going on. I smell some dangerous games, and I don't buy the official story of Charlie Kirk's death. But beyond that, I'm being very careful, and I would urge people to be cautious because, you know, the way I've studied, and in the book, The Danger in American Years of Lead, I talk about counterinsurgency, which is basically what they're waging. They're waging an intellectual counterinsurgency at this point. They know people aren't going to agree with them. So they're playing games with the dissident communities. That's what they're doing. And it's like, you know, Frank Kitson, he talked about the counter gangs and how they defeated the Mau Mau revolt in Kenya. And then, you know, William S. Lind was a Pentagon strategist. He was the guy who oversaw the surge in Iraq. And in his book on fourth generation warfare, he says that waging a counterinsurgency, he says it's basically David versus Goliath. And that story's been told for 4,000 years. Nobody ever sides with Goliath. Everyone sides with David. So if you want to defeat David and you're Goliath and you want people to support you, you can't go fight David. What you do is you create another David and another David and another David. And sometimes you support this David and sometimes you support that David. And the Davids are all fighting with each other. And Goliath just stands back and says, look, why can't you all just get along, right? And the Goliath just stands back and the Davids are fighting with each other. And then Goliath kind of wins by default. That's the game of counterinsurgency, right? The way the IRA was defeated in Northern Ireland, they actually technically took more losses. The British military took more losses than it inflicted. Why? Because rather than fighting the IRA, they paid Protestant fanatical groups to fight the IRA and funneled money to them. They funded breakaway groups from the IRA that claimed the IRA were sellouts and killed them. They had drug dealers fight the IRA. So then the IRA had to work with other drug dealers to protect them. And by the late 80s, it was such a mess in Northern Ireland where no one could tell who was really on what side. And Protestant gangs were fighting Catholics and rival IRAs were fighting other different IRA factions and drug dealers were involved. And then the Vatican was leading these peace marches saying, why can't we all just get along? And the IRA surrendered, right? And that was how you got the Good Friday Agreement. And that's how they play counterinsurgency games, right? Is they muddy the waters so it's not clear. The reason that the Vietnamese National Liberation Front won in Vietnam was because it was like a light switch. Are you for the old order being propped up by the USA, or are you for the communists? And people were unhappy, so they went over to the communists and they won. So they don't want a situation like that to emerge in America. And that's the game of counterinsurgency that's being played. And they've already assumed people aren't believing mainstream media. People don't trust the status quo. So the idea now is to make sure that people that are questioning the status quo don't come together, don't exactly see what's going on, and get kind of confused and manipulated. And that's the game that they're playing.
Yeah, and they know that people are angry over Israel. So the key is to manage the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if people are fighting over Israel, you don't want them fighting it with the ruling elite. You don't want them fighting with the political class. You want them fighting with each other. You want the people, the working class in TPUSA to fight with each other. You don't want them to look up and say, political class, ruling elite, we don't like what you're doing. You want them to blame each other. So it's good. As long as they're on TPUSA doing like a WWF style SmackDown. Oh, brother, I'm going to beat this guy up, brother. They're happy for doing that, for that. They're thrilled. And as an example, here we go. Now, I'm sure that this is actually factual, and there's no way that they would, oh, wait a minute. Starving Russian soldiers planning to eat each other. Well, that makes it clear that this is true, doesn't it? I mean, this doesn't say, reports say there's possibility of, we know right now, and look at this guy. He looks hungry. He's going to eat another Russian, right?
All
right, let's go down.
The key word is planning. So they have a new Pentagon weapon that reads minds.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Starving Russian soldiers are cutting up and eating fellow troops amid ration shortage. Listen to this. An intercepted radio message appears to show from, let's see, Ukraine's military intelligence force. Well, that's a reliable. The GRU released audio they claim shows Russian servicemen in Zaporizhia preparing to eat their younger henchmen. An intercept reportedly recorded a Russian saying, "We'll eat each other. It's all blanked up here. We're already looking for someone younger." I guess they're more tender if you think about it. You know, the younger people. You get an old person like me. I'm all tough who'd want one of these chicken wings, right? What they want is a nice, tender young fella that they can fricassee. I don't give a plank who I have to cut up. I just want to eat. Ukrainian forces say cannibalism is becoming common practice amongst Russians due to lack of food available for troops. In June, the intelligence agency claimed they had intercepted a conversation which showed a Russian soldier who ate his brother for 2 weeks.
Man.
You know what? I'm telling you, these guys in the recording posted on Telegram, a Russian commander can be heard telling a subordinate that one soldier referred to as Brilak killed and ate his fellow soldier Foma over 2 weeks. A commander can be heard saying, "Nobody ran away. Brulak took him out and then ate him for 2 weeks." There we go. I don't think, according to the Moscow Times, some guy fried the heart of one of the men that he killed, which had been seasoned with herbs and cooked with vegetables before eating.
It's just stupid at this point. This is
just
this is like parody of itself.
Just like grandma used to cook. And I bet they said tastes like chicken, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. That's what you got in the UK, buddy. Excuse me. That is, let me see where it came from. Yeah, Metro, whatever that is, some guy named Luke Alsford.
All right. Well, and it's funny because it's like if you read that and you admitted the names, people would probably think that's from some like ridiculous totalitarian country demonizing their enemy or something. Right. I mean, it's just so over the top in the way it's written. And my goodness. You know what's really wild is in the 1970s and 80s, there was a literal cannibal who was supported by the U.S. government in Angola.
Yes.
Jonas Savimbi, right? And Jonas Savimbi met with Ronald Reagan at the White House, and there's photos of Ronald Reagan and Jonas Savimbi sitting together. And he was fighting against the MPLA, the socialist government of Angola at the time. Angola was being supported by Cuba, and the USA was trying to overthrow the government of Angola. So was apartheid South Africa. They sent troops into Angola at one point. And this literal cannibal named Jonas Savimbi, who did eat people, he was loved by America and celebrated by America as a freedom fighter against communism. So, there you go. And that's a kind of a fact that people overlook, that during the Cold War, during the 70s and 80s, the U.S. government was arming a guy who was literally a cannibal, and that the African nation of Angola was subjected to 27 years of civil war by the United States. So there you go.
Here's the author of that story.
Oh,
his name is Luke Alford, a journalist with experience. For some reason, he doesn't look old enough to have a whole hell of a lot of experience. If you
he looks
really
like he's 12 years old. Yeah,
exactly. He's got experience. He sticks to the key principle of our industry: to tell stories of those who can't always speak for themselves. Well, I guess, and to tell them with dignity. Yes, that was a dignified story. He's speaking for the people who've been eaten, and they can't speak for themselves. And he spoke of cannibalism with dignity. These stories kills me. And that's the news media now. It is anonymous government officials. It is, according to the Ukrainians, the Russians fired 100 missiles and they shot down 105. You just look at these stories day after the Russians are fighting with shovels. They have long gas lines because all of their infrastructure has been blown up. Their economy is destroyed. They're eating each other now. They've been out of missiles after the first 3 months of the war. They quickly ran out of missiles. It's a disaster. How could Russia even continue to fight? I guess literally by eating each other.
Yeah, in South Korea, in the time of the military dictatorship, the school textbooks in the South Korean schools said North Koreans had horns and lived in caves, and ate people and stuff like that. And nowadays, South Koreans joke about that. It's kind of a joke that, in South Korea, like, oh, remember in school when they told us North Koreans have horns and live in caves and stuff like that. And, this is what we're coming to at this point. It's tragic in a way, right? That, if you create this dichotomy where if you question anything, the response is, oh, are you saying that Putin is good? It's like you can say anything at this point, right? It must be true, And that's you create this situation where the world is very nuanced. The world is complicated. But if you create a situation where one side is all bad and it's just completely intolerable to ever acknowledge anything good about them, that's when you start getting ridiculous over the top claims like this, because no one will stand up and say, wait a second, are you sure? Are you sure of this? So that's the situation we're in. But I do think we're not the only people laughing at that story. I think there's probably quite a few people laughing at that story out there. I must say, like I said, people don't trust mainstream media.
Well, I'm glad to see that kind of stuff. When MSN puts that up and links to that on their website, that the Russians are literally eating each other, it brings out the contradiction. So the Russians are so weak that they're eating each other. They're starving. They don't have rations. At the same time, they're so powerful that the Europeans have to build a mighty army to defend themselves from these powerful Russians who are starving to death and running out of missiles. Yeah. It ain't going to be much of a fight. They have no military and they're weak. But this powerful military is going to attack and try to destroy all of NATO. But they're so weak. That's the contradiction of and absurdities of this stuff.
Yes, indeed. It's wild. RT India just opened a huge studio, right? India and Russia just signed a military alliance at this point. India is a major country, second largest population in the world. And they're close to Russia, and they're buying Russian missiles, and and Putin was just there. And I believe at this point, there's Putin is going to all kinds of international meetings. Belarus and Russia are closer than ever before. The Oroshenk missile is going into Belarus to protect Belarus, right? And I believe, what is it? The CIS organization is meeting, and Russia's alliance with many former Soviet states is being solidified. They're not isolated. Their economy didn't collapse. The Biden administration wasn't able to isolate them in the way they predicted. That's really what kind of set the tone for this war, is they overestimated it. They thought the second the SMO started, the second the special military operation was launched, they would get the entire world to boycott Russia. And, a lot of countries went along with it, but a lot of key major countries like Saudi Arabia, like India, like China said, no, we're not going to boycott Russia. We're just not going to do that. And that was a huge blow. At this point, North Korea and Russia are closer than ever. In fact, Russian is now a mandatory language in North Korean schools. The military forces of North Korea are fighting on the battlefield at this point. And Russia's
do you think this? I think what North Korea sees an opportunity for something similar to Belarus, because people forget North Korea has about 100-kilometer, I think, border with Russia, right?
Yeah.
And that Russia and that Belarus is a strong partner with Russia. And as you know, I've been to Belarus. In Belarus, the economy is doing great. It's doing. You get there, the economy's rocking and rolling. The people are happy. That life is going well for the people in Belarus. They are not complaining. That sister state business with this superpower next to them, and they're a valuable entity, it's working out real well, right? Working well. Meanwhile, you've got North Korea on the other side, and I think they see themselves maybe not quite the same as a sister state, but they see themselves as an ally, as a partner, as an ally on their border, and I think that it's a great opportunity for North Korea, that they'll have a lot to offer, and that what people will see, I think, eventually is that North Korea had tremendous potential and it was being held back. And they will see great technological strides, great economic strides from North Korea. And people will see that it wasn't that, North Korea, their system is so bad that it's just a disaster. It will be just like Venezuela. You sanction them out of business and then say, look at them, they're out of business. But when given an opportunity, people who have been held down and suppressed usually explode in advancement.
Well, those rare earth minerals that the U.S. government is so angry that China has, control over, it kind of dominates that. They're all over North Korea. And that is an underlying fact that Trump's efforts towards peace in his first term, which he would like to continue very much. But at this point, it's tied up with Russia. North Korea has basically said, if you want to make peace with us, you got to make peace with Russia first. We're not talking to you until that's resolved. But those minerals, those mountains, that's the mountainous part of the Korean Peninsula is North Korea. And those mountains are full of minerals. North Korea already makes their own cell phones in-house. They don't have to import any of the computer chip technology because those mountains are so full of minerals. So, that is got to be a factor there in all of this. And I think that's why, Trump would like to possibly reopen negotiations. Look, Kirill Dmitriev is in Miami right now. Now, it's interesting. Anna Paula Luna, right? She's the congresswoman from Florida, and she has suddenly become kind of the champion of negotiating with Russia. I've seen her,
Yes.
really speak up. Now, she's very pro-Israel. I don't agree with her, and she's not good on Venezuela and some other things, but she really wants to negotiate with Russia, and she's down there in Miami, in South Florida, and Kirill Dmitriev is down there, and it's nothing but good news. They're talking good news. On Thanksgiving, they had a special Thanksgiving Day gala in Moscow for Kirill Dmitriev, sponsored by who? The American Chamber of Commerce, which is, that's an American business body. They gave a special Thanksgiving Day turkey feast sponsored by the American Chamber of Commerce on Thanksgiving in Moscow, where they honored Kirill Dmitriev for all of the negotiations and business deals that are being signed. At this point, the Trump administration is saying that the second those sanctions get lifted, it's go time. So many companies are going to be go, setting up shop. And, Kirill Dmitriev is the Bering Sea Bridge guy. That's his life's work. That's what he's been dedicated to. And the fact that the Bering Sea tunnel guy, who has been dedicated to building that tunnel connecting Alaska with Russia over the Bering Strait, that he is in Florida right now, meeting 24 hours a day with Trump administration officials and members of the business community to work out the terms of what exactly happens and what deals get made when the sanctions are lifted. That gives me hope. I will say it can't happen fast enough. The war has been going on. People have been dying. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, 500,000 Ukrainians have died this year. 500,000. Can you imagine that? Right?
In 1 year. In
1 year. Yeah. The year's not even over yet. That's like, and they're dragging everyone off the street. They're lowering the draft age again. And then our leaders want us to believe they care about Ukraine, and that's why they're keeping this going. They just care so much about the Ukrainian people. Give me a break. Look at this devastating conflict and the amount of losses that Ukraine is experiencing on the battlefield. And it's like, let's just sign the agreement and end this, right? And Europe, and it's the British. It is the British Empire.
Always.
Yeah, that is trying to undermine this and trying to do everything they can to prevent negotiations and prevent this from going ahead. And they are pulling out all the stops, it seems. But look, I tell people it's about oil and gas. The way Putin fixed Russia's economy is he made it an oil and gas giant, right? He made Gazprom and Rosneft, two state-controlled energy companies, the center of the economy, started selling oil and gas around the world. And the British Empire is oil. It's oil and gas. That's what they sell. That's what they dominate. Wall Street in London. It's oil banks, basically. BP is HSBC Bank, and ExxonMobil is Chase Bank. And you look at the elites, the people that really run Wall Street, the people who run London Stock Exchange, they're oil bankers. That's what they are. And Russia is a competitor on the international oil markets, just like Venezuela, just like Iran, just like Libya used to be. Libya used to be the top oil exporter in Africa, just like Iraq used to be. And the world economy runs on oil, and they want to dominate the oil markets. And Russia is challenging them for control of the oil markets. And that's something they can't tolerate. And as the rate of profit goes down, and as there's more instability, and as sections of the world are moving in a different direction and joining with the BRICS economy, they're getting more and more desperate for their profits. That's what's driving the confrontation with Russia. Just like with Venezuela, it's about oil. And I will say this, back to Trump, in his 23-minute speech where he never mentioned Venezuela, he did keep going on and on about the gas prices are so low. The gas prices are so low. And it's like he was trying to get that in just before the gas prices are now rising like crazy because of what he's doing with the oil tankers. And so it's like he wants to get credit for it before that changes because the gas prices are now rising, right? If you start blocking a major oil exporting country from exporting their oil, supply and demand, the amount of oil goes down, the supply goes down, the price rises. That's how these things work. So, we're going to be paying for it at the gas tank, right? Just like
what do you think? What do you think about? Let me ask you about this. One of the things that, are you familiar with the Tulsi Gabbard situation, wherein there were these articles and the in Europe, and they said, oh yeah, the Russians don't want something like some crap. The Russians are going to. Let me find it. Basically, what they were saying was the Russians are going to attack all of Europe. and
Right.
that that U.S. Where are we? Where is it? What they were saying is, um, there we go. Denies media claims about aims of Putin's aim to seize all of Ukraine. So they did the usual. All he wants to do is take Ukraine and spread the Soviet Empire and all this stuff. And Tulsi Gabbard came out, quote, "No, this is a lie. And
Right.
propaganda Reuters is willingly pushing on behalf of warmongers who want to undermine President Trump's tireless efforts to end this bloody war that has resulted in more than 1 million casualties on both sides. Dangerously, you're promoting this false narrative to block President Trump's peace effort and fomenting hysteria and fear among the people to get them to support the escalation of war, which is what NATO and the EU really want in order to pull the United States military directly into war with Russia." Gabbard said that the truth is U.S. intelligence has informed policymakers that Russia seeks to avoid a larger war with NATO. It also assesses that, as the last few years have shown, Russia's battlefield performance indicates it does not currently have the capability to conquer and occupy all of Ukraine, let alone Europe. So that's what she says. So she gives them a little bit, fair enough. I don't mind that if she gives them a little bit of what they want in order to make her point. And her point is, you're lying. Russia does not want to attack. I think that's good because it undermines these European lunatics who are just like, Putin's a madman and he wants to, he's heading for the English Channel. I think that was important.
Yeah, well, when looking over this year and what's happened, I will say one great thing that's happened this year is we saw the end of USAID. It was broken apart, and whatever was left of it was absorbed by the State Department. And USAID was an awful agency that was doing awful things around the world and interfering in our own politics, not just in politics around the world. I mean, regime change operations and democracy promotion and all this stuff that, is just intelligence and destabilization. But the reason that Trump and his folks are against it is because it also was, indirectly boosting the Democrats in American politics, and they didn't appreciate that. And now USAID is gone, and we've got an intelligence director like Tulsi Gabbard, who has a record as somebody who has spoken out against U.S. regime change ops. Now, like you said, she's a team player. She's not just herself now. She's in the administration. Okay, she's in the administration, so she can't be like getting on stage and saying, I don't agree with this or that. But all the good stuff coming out of the Trump administration seems to be coming from her. She's the one who revealed that Russiagate was a hoax, right? She revealed that. She was just on the stage at Turning Points USA warning about the danger of war with Russia. She debunked this claim. She's the force for good within the administration. And I mean, RFK is also kind of playing an interesting role. I think it's interesting what he's doing as well. And, just today, Matt Gaetz, right, was with Tucker Carlson, and he was talking about how Israel blackmailed him. That was very heavy, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, that I guess he was saying that they had this claim of him with underage girls or whatever, and that basically they pressured him to try and free an Israeli spy in Iran or something in exchange for them making
go away. I followed that story. A lot of people don't know what happened with Matt Gaetz is that, and this girl that he was approached by, now listen to this, apparently she was 17 or whatever, right?
Right.
Had a legal ID that said she was 24.
Right.
A legal ID, number one. Number two, the guy that got her the ID, he worked for the state of Florida, was a hardcore Zionist.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder if he had any connections to the Mossad. Somehow, this 17-year-old girl comes up with it, and apparently this guy had gotten other IDs. It was a valid ID. He was able to do that in Florida because whatever, I don't know if he worked for whoever he worked for, but he got her a valid ID. Now, imagine this. Does it sound like a honeypot thing? So, a underage girl gets a valid ID, and she approaches Matt Gaetz. And then they come back and they're like, oh, yes, he's that chick. Now, this is my understanding of what happened. The FBI, somebody said, oh, there you go. Matt Gaetz was messing with a 17-year-old girl. And the FBI looks into it and determined, well, we couldn't possibly prosecute him because the girl had a legal ID. So how was the man to have known? You can't. Right. There's no mens rea. There's no, what's the word, criminal intent there.
Right.
If he checks, do you have ID? Right here. Oh, state. He could have took it to a cop. Is this a good ID? Yes, it is. Thank you. So they determined that they couldn't prosecute him. He violated no law. But of course, in the court of public opinion, oh, Matt Gaetz is a pedophile. He can't be a and of course, who would want that kind of discussion? And now they're going to drag you in front of the Senate confirmation. Did you have sex with a underage girl? But I didn't have that. She had an ID. No.
Right. No, they're very nasty. And that raises questions about Epstein. That even raises for me questions about, with Bill Clinton and all of that, because a lot of people have pointed out Monica Lewinsky was going to Israel every summer as a kid. She went to Israeli summer camps throughout the 90s, right? And that Bill Clinton had a type. Everybody knew he was into, certain body types and all of
exactly.
that, and she was at the White House and all of this. And then the phone calls being recorded and something was going on there. And it's like the deep state, there's an element of like, when you talk about the deep state, and especially when you talk about Mossad, it's like they're so below the belt minded. It's like that's what they're thinking about. It's like, how can we embarrass somebody? How can we get something R-rated and gross? And part of it is that they know that, like, with this Matt Gaetz thing, people are going to stop listening, right? They hear the first part and they think, I don't want to hear this, right? And they just they associate that with somebody's name, right? And they just, no one wants those gross details. They're disgusting. You know what I'm saying? And that's the game that the deep state plays. And right. And it seems like, when they don't like somebody or something, they think of some kind of gross R-rated sexual scandal to invent about them or somehow attach them to. And it's always more complicated than you realize. And like this Matt Gaetz thing, it gets even more complicated than what you just said. Like apparently there was an Israeli spy who was arrested in Iran and they like pressured him to like get on TV and try to do something for the Israel. It was like this whole complicated thing where they were like trying to get him to do things to make the story go away and stuff like that. You look into it, and it makes you just wonder about American media and how manipulative and how much like we're only ever hearing one side of the story, right? We only hear the side of the story that they want us to hear, and that all kinds of games are being played around the world.
How about we look at this? The woman who did all the recording, at the center of this was a woman named Linda Tripp.
Yeah.
Read her obituary. Linda Tripp graduated from high school in East Hanover, New Jersey, and then went to work in Army intelligence. Linda Tripp, the woman who was at the center, the woman who befriended Monica Lewinsky, who then talked to her on the phone and then started recording everything.
Yeah.
Work for Army intelligence. Might I add, where did Linda Tripp and Monica Lewinsky meet? Most people don't ask that. You know where they met?
Where?
They met in the Pentagon, because Linda Tripp was working in the Pentagon. And it's oddly enough, somebody decided to move Monica Lewinsky out of the White House after she had their affair, and they put her right next to Linda Tripp. Tripp struck up a conversation with her and they became friends. What a coincidence that Lewinsky is out of there right next to a woman who was with Army intelligence.
Yeah.
Interestingly, isn't it weird that they always left out that Linda Tripp worked for Army intelligence?
Yeah. And where has Monica Lewinsky been ever since then? Israel. Right. That's
exactly
where she lives. She lives in Israel now. I mean, and so I'm looking at the whole thing and I'm asking questions. People have also pointed out, so there was an Israeli spy, a guy who spied on the U.S. government, right, for Israel. And I guess the latest development, right, is that the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, met with the guy.
Was it Pollard?
I believe so, yeah. And he met with this guy who's convicted of spying on America. And here the U.S., it's like, it's getting to the point that, and then you see what's going on the right, how opposition to Israel is just rising on the right. People have just kind of had it. But then you have this conservative establishment that is saying, no, we support Israel and all of that. And when I heard Tucker Carlson at Turning Points USA, I didn't agree with everything in the speech, but it was, for Tucker Carlson, it's some of the best stuff I've heard. He even called out anti-Islamic bigotry. And he said, I don't hate anyone because they're a Muslim, right? And the idea that we should hate people because of their religion. Look, we have freedom of religion. He condemned anti-Islamic bigotry, to an audience of Trump supporters, to an audience of conservatives, and got applause for it. That was amazing to me. It's just things are changing very, very, very rapidly. And that I'm calling it dissident MAGA. right? The dissident MAGA, the people in the MAGA movement who don't approve of Trump's foreign policy, they are the most important constituency in America right now, right? The left is the left, and the left has its problems and whatever, but dissident MAGA, right? People that are in the MAGA movement but are smart enough to see through and question the foreign policy, that aren't just playing team sports, that supported Trump for principles, not for his personality. Those people are really, really, really important, and they could lead the country in a very good direction. I think that there's a lot of hope right now because so many people are awakening, and it represents, you know, layers of the American state. I mean, you know, it's businesses, it's you know, communities, etc. There's some wild stuff going on. You know, if you come to our event January 11th, people will get to meet, I believe, Jeff Young, who ran for office in Kentucky. And, you know, there's a number of great anti-war activists in Kentucky. And in Kentucky, I actually asked them at our event before, I said, you know, why is Kentucky, right? You've got Rand Paul, right, who takes a lot of anti-war stances. He's in the U.S. Senate. You've got Thomas Massey in the House of Representatives. He also takes a lot of great anti-war stances. Like, why is it that there's so much anti-war sentiment in Kentucky? And they said, because there's so many military people here. That's what they said. Yeah, it's that it's such a military state. There's so many military bases and all that. The military are the people that are against these wars because they have to go fight them. And you'll notice that when Trump spoke to the American people on Thursday, he didn't mention Venezuela. What did he do? He announced, I'm giving every American service member a check. I am sending a check to every American service member. Wow. Well, who is it who probably isn't thrilled with him about going and attacking another country? Servicemen. So who is he trying to boost his approval rating with? Servicemen, right? I mean, we're in a very, very, very interesting time in American politics. And I am full of hope at this point, right? For the Bering Sea Tunnel, for ending this war, for Trump, you know, making all kinds of noise and doing awful things with Venezuela, but not looking like he wants to follow through on it because of the fact that the American people are not behind him on doing so. But I will say that, you know, Trump, what worries me a little bit, he seems to be scraping the barrel. He's doing all kinds of gimmicky things that are designed to make him more popular. And it doesn't look good to me, right? It's like, oh my goodness, we're so unpopular. And like, then now they're having the Patriot Games. You hear about this? The Patriot Games. They're having a big high school sports competition at the White House this summer. What are you doing? Right. And that's going to like make high school athletes like him or something. And he's sending a check to the military, and he's going to rename the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center. And he's just kind of scraping the barrel with stuff he can do that is kind of designed to get him a couple points. That's not looking very good, but at the end of the day, if Trump really wants to be popular, he's going to have to do things. He's going to have to push back against the prevailing institutions. He's going to have to not do what Israel says. He's going to have to not do what the war lobby says. And that's what puts you in danger. And that's probably why two people shot at him, recently over the summer. I mean, you have followed closer than I the trial of that Ryan Roth guy.
Yeah, the weirdest thing, man. The government petitioned for the court to hide the evidence surrounding the Ryan Ruth trial, arguing that it would be a danger to the U.S. national security if people found out what was going on with this guy. So it was crazy. And I mean, just absolute madness. You know, there's something weird going on with the whole Ryan Ruth. He was connected.
Yeah, well, that's what usually happens, right? When somebody tries to assassinate a president, they go out of their way to make sure we don't know anything about them. Or, I mean, come on, like, how stupid do they think we are, right? This guy came back from Ukraine. This is an American who went and fought in Ukraine, was recruiting people in coordination with the State Department, apparently, to fight in Ukraine. And then he just decides, hey, I'm coming back from Ukraine. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to kill the president of the United States. And then he has a trial for doing that, and it's all classified. What's going on here? Like, do they think we're stupid? Like, I mean, and that all this stuff about Iran was going to try to kill Trump. Iran wasn't going to try to kill Trump. Ukraine tried to kill Trump. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. Look at it. It's right in front of our faces. Ukraine tried to kill Trump, right? They tried to kill Trump. And even when Zelensky came to the White House, J.D. Vance said to him, you guys were campaigning pretty hard for the other side during the election. They know what's going on, I mean, but I mean, it's It's right in front of our faces. And that new national security strategy, right, that says Europe is not great and sticks up for the free speech of those who criticize the anti-Russia hysteria and all of that. I mean, again, nice words. I would like to see the actual peace treaty end. That was one great thing that came out of Putin's press conference, his end of the year press conference, 4 hours this year, very long. One thing he did say was, we would like to see peace in the new year. That is one thing that they would very much like to see, right? You know, and I'm hoping that is the case. That's what the world would very much like to see, is peace. So we'll have to see.
I read that the Russians recently said, "Hey, we'd be perfectly willing to sign a non-aggression treaty with you, regarding Europe."
Yeah.
And what's happening is this: the European lunatics, these people are lunatics, they are wholly isolated, the most isolated political group on earth. They're at odds with the US, they're at odds with the Russians, they're at odds with the Chinese, and they're at odds with the people in their own countries. They got like 10-15% approval rating max. They're completely, totally isolated. But I think the only thing they have left to really lean on, to really call themselves leaders, is Russia. All they have to discuss, to talk about, the only foundation of legitimacy they have is Russia's trying to get us, and we've got to protect you from Russia. That's all they have. If that story dissipates, then everybody looks at them and says, my God, we're broke and our economy's going to hell, and you did it.
Yeah, well, this is the status quo in Europe that is tied in with NATO, that the European people are largely rejecting. And that's why we're seeing the rise of the new right, the National Front in France, the Alternative for Germany party, Brexit in Britain, and all of that. It's in response to the fact that this, NATO establishment that is tied in with the United States and Europe is crashing and burning. And if the U.S. involvement with them in opposition to Russia goes away, they'll lose their ability to stay in power, right? They're basically trying to keep their jobs at this point. They need the war with Russia to keep going, to keep their jobs, because their own people don't want them anymore. And things are changing. And again, back to the years of lead, right? Italy was getting ready to leave NATO in the 1950s and 60s. And in 1978, it came very, very close. The Italian Communist Party won a sweep in the elections, and the Conservative Party, the Christian Democrat Party, approached the Communist Party and said, let's form a coalition government to leave NATO. And Aldo Moro, who was from the Christian Democrat Party, sat down with the Communist Party leaders, Togliatti and others, and he said, let's form a coalition government. You guys are communists, we're Christian conservatives, but we're both against NATO, and we both don't think the future of Italy is tied in with America. Let's form a coalition government on that basis. And then Aldo Moro was kidnapped mysteriously, and he was held hostage, and he was held hostage for many months by this Maoist Red Brigade group that didn't want the Communist Party to form a coalition government with him. And then it was reported, there was a reporter who came forward and said that apparently, according to inside sources, the Italian government knew where Aldo Moro was being held, and they weren't going to go get him. They weren't going to go, rescue him, because the CIA wasn't allowing it. And that was big, wow. Right? And the CIA was basically telling the Italian government, don't go rescue him. The reporter who reported that ended up dead. Not surprising. And then Aldo Moro was killed, and they left his body halfway between the Communist Party office and the Christian Democratic Party office, exactly at the halfway point, just to make a point. We will never allow a conservative, far left, far right union against imperialism. We're never going to allow that, right? And that, you look at that whole case, right, that what they call the years of lead in Italy, which was at the time that the public was moving against NATO, right? All of a sudden, Italian politics became very, very violent. Hundreds of assassinations, hundreds of bombings, at least 400 people killed, a lot of people crippled for life, shot in their legs, and all of this. And the Italian public just got weary and demoralized, one of the people that we're going to honor at the event is a woman named Jessica Coco, a longtime friend of mine, and she's Italian. She goes back to Italy pretty frequently. She's got family there. She's also she also knew Paul Robeson Jr., who was a friend of yours, right? She's from New Jersey. We're going to be giving her an award at the upcoming event in New Jersey. And she talked about how just the public just became demoralized, and that even though people wanted to leave NATO, the economy in Italy got worse, and the violence and the killing, basically it wasn't that people agreed or just weren't interested in politics. It was that you might get shot if you get involved in politics. And as a result, NATO kept in power, right? And NATO won by default. And that's what I believe they are doing in America right now. They are fomenting a kind of years of lead counterinsurgency operation. And we have to not fall for it. We have to build a movement that doesn't glorify violence, but rather comes together on the basis of certain principles, like opposing globalism and imperialism and wanting a better life for working families. And that's really what CPI, my organization, the Center for Political Innovation, that's what we've always been about, right? And that I saw the way the media was celebrating the killing of this insurance guy by Luigi Mangione, which I'm not sure he actually did, mind you, right? I think he may be innocent, but regardless, right, the way they were celebrating it, and a lot of people didn't, Do Dissidents podcast. They were not with me when I first put the book out, but then they actually came out after the killing of Charlie Kirk, and they actually said on Joy Reid's podcast, they said Caleb was right. Caleb was absolutely right. Many people have said, "Wow, you were ahead of the game." Last year when you were talking about don't celebrate Luigi Mangione, but then with Erica Kirk and Charlie Kirk and all of that stuff, we can see that you were onto something. There is a psyop going on for political violence. I don't know if you saw this, but back in July, every member of Congress got $5,000 for their personal security. That was their allowance. In September, it became $10,000. Starting December 1st, it's going to be $20,000 every member of Congress is going to get for their personal security. $20,000 a month. Can you believe this? Right? Because there's been so much political violence, so many threats. It's particularly wild. We got Marjorie Taylor Greene saying the reason she stepped down is because she's getting threats of violence.
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew for a fact she was getting, that's why she did. She was getting threats. And the threats weren't coming from anonymous on the street either, pal. They were coming from, as the old, the old horror movie said, the guy's calling from inside the house. That's what was happening with the Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because during early 70s, late 60s, right, there were a huge amount of political bombings that happened. There was like an average of 3 political bombings a day, but people didn't know about it because of the fact that they realized pretty quickly that the reason people do stuff like that is they want publicity for their cause. So they actually got together, and the FBI and all that, and they said, if there's a political bombing, don't advertise it. And like some of the more sophisticated terrorist groups like the Weathermen, they actually learned to publicize their own bombings because they knew the mainstream media wasn't going to promote them, right? And that was kind of the strategy. And that has generally been the policy in American media. You don't advertise political violence, right? So what's going on here? I see them, advertising Luigi Mangione. They're already making a documentary about his life. He hasn't even been convicted of the crime yet, and they're making a documentary all about his life, and they're blasting his face everywhere. And generally the policy is, that you don't, if there's a political act of violence, you don't advertise it in the media because that will cause people to do copycats. I think that's what they want. I think they want copycats. I think that's the case here. And I urge people to be very, very careful with it. I also urge people to, not get led into some kind of trap. January 6th, there were a lot of people who went to that rally because they supported Donald Trump. They thought the election was stolen, and the doors of the Capitol were left open, and they walked in and look what happened, right? And Charlottesville is even weirder, right? Charlottesville, in the lead up to Charlottesville, since the beginning of time, since I was a kid, the KKK puts on their stupid costumes and they're surrounded by police, and a bunch of people protest them. And, and the mainstream politicians say, don't ignore them, don't protest. And the far left protests them and gets into a scuffle with the police, and 5 or 6 Klansmen put on their stupid costumes. And it's just a stupid aspect of American politics. But Charlottesville 2017 was very different. And that it happened, it was, they were the Klan or whoever, the white nationalists were having their thing. And suddenly it got blasted to all the Trump email lists. And there were a lot of Trumpers that said, this is actually a white supremacist neo-Nazi thing. Don't go to this. But it was blasted to all the Trumper email lists. And the counter protest was also blasted like crazy. And I'm on every leftist email that you must go to Charlottesville, buses from New York, buses from New Jersey, go to Charlottesville. You know, Cornel West is going to be there. He's going to be there. And it was like everyone on the political left and right was being told to go to this little town in Virginia, right? And then they get there and there's no police between the two crowds. And I mean, you know,
and then there's a guy who drives into the crowd. It was all set for something like that to happen.
Right.
It was almost guaranteed, where they turned the volume up so high. And then, of course, there's a bunch of guys marching around who all have neatly pressed khakis. You ever notice? Why is it that they always have neatly pressed khakis? That's how you know it's a Fed. You know what I mean? They got on a nice shirt with 3 buttons and neatly pressed khakis. And I'm like, and I'm supposed to believe these are white supremacist guys? Get out of here.
Right. And I'm not that guy probably did it on his own, right? I'm not saying
right, yes.
Do that, but if you get a crowd of far left people and far right people and you jam them together, right? And there's no police between them. And from what I understand, the racists or whatever, they wanted to have their rally somewhere else. They wanted to have it in another place. And the town said, oh, no, you can't do it. You got to have it right here downtown. Yeah. I mean, they knew exactly what they were doing, right? It was for political reasons. And that's why I'm urging people. I want people to get involved in politics, but be careful. Don't get it led into a trap. There's this communist group. And, you know, I know Jyoti, you know, she's done a lot of great research on this. Jyoti Brar, who comes on your, you know, this group, the Revolutionary Communists of America. No political education or whatever, but they're marching around the streets with big hammers and sickles. Look at us, we're communists, right? And Vivek Ramaswamy was promoting them on social media, and something's going on. Something's not right. And you look at it, it's like something's off, right? And no education is going on, but they're there to kind of scare conservatives, right? That's, you know, conservatives are being told communism, you got to hate communism. That's why we got to hate Venezuela. That's why we got to hate China, communism. And so then there's a group of people that don't do anything but go around waving communist flags. We're communists. Yay, something's not right. You know, something's not right. I urge people to be very, very, very careful, you know, with all of this. We're in very, very strange times. But at the end of the day, look, what we need is an organization. And, you know, we need people in communities, and that's what we're building. And I'm really, really honored to have you at our event, Garland. It'll be just so awesome to have you there. I'm really, really glad you're making the time to come. And it's going to be great. We're honoring, 4 local activists from New Jersey, including Lisa Davis, who is a longtime organizer of the Uhuru movement, who has recently faced some criminal charges, a fine that she was fined for organizing a pro-Palestine rally in New Jersey. And she's fighting that fine in the Supreme Court of New Jersey right now, actually. And she may very well win. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. She was accused of being on a bullhorn at a time they could prove with Uber records she was not on the bullhorn. And so she'll be there. We'll be honoring her. We're going to be honoring different people from the area. And it's going to be really, really great. My friend who was the Occupy Wall Street tour guide is going to be there. Christina Khalil, who ran for the U.S. Congress on a pro-Palestine platform for the Green Party, and also was pro-Uhuru and spoke at Uhuru rallies. She's going to be there. We're going to have people talking about the persecution of Dr. Hak Jahan in South Korea and that whole case going on, which is not getting a lot of attention over here, but it's certainly a big deal in South Korea in the media and such. And I'm hearing different things, like there might be United Nations press conferences coming up about that case, and the Trump administration is certainly paying close attention to it. It's going to be a really great gathering. There's going to be music, food for everybody. I really hope people can make it, because it's going to be really, really awesome. We got a team of people coming from around the country, music, food, speeches, the whole 9 yards, awards. It's going to be great.
All right. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to being there. The Keep Up with Caleb over at the cpiusa.org, and you can find out where it's going to be, and you can get tickets. Just go to cpiusa.org for more information. Thanks a lot, Caleb. Certainly look forward to it. Another great talk. Everybody, don't forget, check out Caleb's website. Thanks to all my Patreon people and PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you for everybody who contributes to keep this channel going. Certainly at the end of this, you see my P.O. box. If you want to send me, people have books they send me. Whatever you want to send, there's my P.O. box, within reason, of course. But thanks a lot, Caleb. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, the most important thing that you can do is share this on all your social media platforms. We're out.